My daughter set the presents I'd wrapped for my grandchildren beside her garbage bins and told me to take them home because my coat would embarrass her guests. The porch light caught the red ribbon I'd tied with my stiff left hand, and I could actually hear the paper crack under my grip. My jaw locked so hard I tasted metal. I looked past her shoulder at the lit tree, the long table, the children I'd been told were keeping Christmas simple, and I said 6 quiet words that changed everything. Bring me back every house key tomorrow. By midnight, her neighbor was on my porch with an envelope in her hand, and I understood Christmas dinner was the smallest lie my daughter had told me. If you've ever learned what family really thinks of you in one sentence, stay with me, because that envelope turned humiliation into evidence. The truth started with a brass key I should have taken back in October. My name is Tom Bennett. I'm 67 years old, a widower, a father, and for 38 years I fixed city buses before most people were awake. If something rattled, leaked, sparked, stuck, or failed in bad weather, I knew how to make it hold. That had been my value for most of my life. Not charm, not money. Usefulness. My daughter Claire used to know that. When she was 8, she wore the first spare key to our old brick house on a blue shoelace under her shirt. She'd come home from school, let herself in, and sit at the kitchen table with an apple and her spelling words until Mary got back from the library or I came in from the garage. That key meant trust in our family. It meant if you opened the door, you belonged there. Mary used to polish the brass with the corner of a dish towel and joke, "A key is just love made practical." After Mary died, Claire cried in my driveway with both hands over her face and said, "Dad, give me a copy. I need to know I can get to you if something happens." I handed her one that same afternoon. I didn't hesitate. I was grateful she wanted a reason to come by. For a while she did. I helped her and Adrian buy their first house when the bank came up short on the down payment. I sold my fishing boat, broke the certificate Mary and I had set aside for our Alaska trip, and wired the money without asking for a note. Adrian stood in that empty living room in loafers that cost more than my first truck, and shook my hand like he was closing a deal. Claire cried and hugged me and said, "You saved us." I believed that meant something permanent. I built shelves in the nursery with my own hands. I replaced their water heater on Thanksgiving morning one year, while the turkey sweated on the counter. I paid 2 semesters of Ellie's private school tuition when Adrian's big development fee got delayed. I drove Sam to speech therapy for 6 months after Claire said she couldn't keep leaving work early. If something broke in their lives, they called me before they called anyone else. That should have made me feel loved. Instead, over time, it made me available. The change didn't happen all at once. People like to imagine betrayal comes in a clean moment, like a plate hitting the floor. Usually it arrives like dust. You notice it on the windowsill, then in the corners. Then one day it's in your lungs. Claire started correcting me in front of people. Not about anything important. Little things. The way I pronounced a neighborhood name. The way I told a story. The way I wore my reading glasses low on my nose. Adrian started doing that polished smile he used whenever he wanted to insult someone without owning it. "He's old school," he'd say, touching my shoulder like he was blessing me. "Tom still thinks a handshake is a contract." There were laughs when he said that. Always small. Always deniable. Claire would join in just enough to let him know it was safe. The first time it really hit me was at Ellie's school auction in the spring. I'd spent a Saturday repairing a broken stage platform for free because the school couldn't get a contractor in time. I showed up that evening in a clean flannel and the good overcoat Mary bought me 12 winters ago, the camel one with the lining I had stitched twice at the sleeve. Claire met me at the entrance, looked me up and down, and said, "Dad, next time let me know before you come." These events are a little more formal. I remember the scent of her perfume more than the words. Orange blossom. Expensive. Not the powdery lotion her mother used to wear. She kept smiling while she said it, which somehow made it worse. I stood there with my ticket envelope in my hand and told myself not to be dramatic. That was the mistake I kept making. A month later, Adrian asked whether I'd ever thought about unlocking the value in my house. My place sits on a corner lot in a neighborhood that used to be overlooked and suddenly wasn't. Coffee shops came in. Young couples started talking about walkability. My little brick house, the one Mary and I bought when Claire was in kindergarten, turned from ordinary to desirable without asking my permission. What would I unlock it for? I asked. He leaned back in their kitchen, all bright counters and imported light fixtures, and said, lifestyle. Flexibility. You don't need all that space, Tom. All that space. 1,100 square feet. 2 bedrooms. A narrow hall where Claire's height marks are still penciled on the doorframe behind the pantry. Mary's rosebush outside the front window. My tools in the basement. Her recipe cards in the blue tin above the fridge. I told him I was staying put. He smiled the way people smile when they think time is on their side. Then, in October, I had a dizzy spell at the hardware store. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't collapse. I grabbed the edge of a shelf with both hands until the room steadied and let the cashier call Claire because she lived closest. By the time she got there, I was embarrassed more than sick. The urgent care doctor said dehydration, low blood sugar, exhaustion. He told me to drink water and stop pretending coffee counts as lunch. Claire reacted like I'd been found wandering on the interstate. Suddenly, she needed copies of my medication list. She wanted names of my doctors. Adrian asked where I kept my important papers in case of emergency. Claire stood in my kitchen with her phone out, taking pictures of my fuse box, my basement stairs, the rug by the back door. For insurance, she said. For what insurance? I asked. In case something happens, Dad, why are you making everything difficult? That word stayed with me. Difficult. I wasn't sick. I wasn't confused. I was inconvenient. A week after that, I came back from the barber and found Adrian in my side yard, pretending to admire my gutters. He had his phone pointed at the house. When I asked what he was doing, he said, just showing a guy how solid old brick looks when it's maintained. A guy? I let it go. I also let go of the fact that Claire asked whether the deed still had Mary's name on it, and whether I'd updated my will, and whether I'd ever considered a trust. She said it all in the voice people use when they want credit for concern. Dad, if something happens suddenly, probate is such a mess. I should have heard the machinery turning behind that sentence, but it was my daughter, and I was tired. And grief makes fools out of decent men because once you lose one person you truly love, you start clinging to the people who share her face. By December, Claire was hosting bigger and bigger things at that house. Adrian was always half renovating and half performing inside. There were catered trays now. Fresh cedar on the staircase. A photographer once for a casual holiday brunch that looked like a furniture ad. Adrian's business cards had gotten thicker. Claire's voice had gotten thinner. Still, she invited me for Christmas Eve. Not warmly. Not the way Mary used to plan Christmas, with lists and extra chairs and too many pies. More like a detail being managed. We'll do an early dinner, Claire told me over the phone 3 days before. Nothing huge. Should I bring the cinnamon cookies Mary used to make? I asked. She was quiet for half a second too long. If you want? If you want? Like it was a hobby, not 30 years of tradition. I spent the whole day before Christmas making those cookies. My hands ache in the cold, and the dough stuck more than it used to, but I rolled it thin the way Mary liked, and cut the stars with the dented tin cutter we bought at a church fair in 1994. I wrapped Ellie's sketch pencils. I wrapped Sam's train set. I put cash in 2 red cards because children like choices. And old men who grew up poor don't forget the force of a crisp bill tucked where nobody expects it. I ironed a shirt. I shaved twice around the jaw because the whiskers go white and hide. I even brushed my coat with the horsehair brush Mary kept by the door. Then, 2 hours before I was supposed to come over, Claire called and canceled. At first she made it sound accidental. Oh, Dad, listen, tonight's just gotten complicated. What kind of complicated? Adrian had to invite 2 clients. Their plans changed. It's going to be crowded. I stood at my counter, phone tucked to my ear, looking at the cooling rack full of cookies. I can sit in a crowded room, I said. That's not what I mean. Of course it wasn't. I asked whether the kids were disappointed. She said too quickly, we'll make another day. Another day. For Christmas. Then she made the mistake that told me more than all the soft excuses before it. "It's just not the right mix tonight, Dad." I said nothing. She heard her own words land and tried to dress them up. I mean, with Adrian's work people, the conversation, the energy. The energy. I'm trying to protect everyone from awkwardness. Awkwardness. That was the word she chose for her father existing in the same room as catered shrimp. I should have stayed home. I know that. Pride should have kept me in my kitchen with Mary's blue cookie tin and the little tree by the radiator. But humiliation has a way of making you want one last chance to be wrong. So I loaded the presents into the truck anyway and drove across town telling myself maybe she was panicking, maybe I could at least leave the gifts, maybe family could still be family if I stood still long enough. When I turned onto her street, every house looked dipped in magazine light. Wreaths on doors, windows blazing, inflatable snowmen leaning drunk in yards. Her place glowed the brightest. Adrian had up lighting on the white columns and lanterns along the walkway. Through the big front windows I could see a table set for at least 12. So much for crowded. Claire opened the door before I even reached the bell. She had on a velvet green dress and earrings Mary would have called too sharp. Behind her I heard glasses clink and somebody laughed too hard. "Dad," she hissed, not because she was surprised, but because I had made her fear being seen. I held up the cookie tin. "Just dropping these off." Her eyes went to my coat first. Then my boots. Then the truck behind me. "Not tonight." I looked past her. Ellie was by the piano in a red sweater. Sam had a paper crown tipped over one ear. Both of them were very much there. Very much healthy. Very much waiting inside a Christmas I had been edited out of. "You told me it was small." It changed, clearly. That should have stung her. It didn't. "Dad, please don't do this on the porch." Then she did the thing I still see when I wake up at 3 in the morning. She took the presents from my hands, stepped 2 paces to the side, and set them down beside the black garbage bins by the garage so nobody entering through the front would have to see them. Not on a chair. Not just inside the mudroom. Beside the trash. "We'll bring these in later," she said. My fingers cramped so hard around the cookie tin handle I thought I'd bend it. Inside, Adrian appeared in the hallway with that smooth host smile. He didn't come to the door. He stayed where the warm light hit him best and said, "Tom, let's keep things easy, all right?" "Easy." Claire lowered her voice like I was the one making the scene. "Adrian's clients are here. I can't have this turn into a whole thing." This meant me. Then came the sentence that finished whatever I'd been trying to save. "Please just go home before the children come over, Dad." The children. My grandchildren. Being referred to like guests who needed shielding from a leak in the roof. That was when I looked down and saw my own brass key on Adrian's key ring on the hall table. I'd know that scratched head anywhere. I filed those 2 marks into it myself after Claire lost the first copy years ago. My key, in his house, out in plain sight. That's when I said, "Bring me back every house key tomorrow." Claire blinked like I'd spoken another language. Adrian's smile thinned. "Tom, don't be dramatic." I looked at him and, for the first time in years, did not soften my face to keep the peace. Then I set the cookie tin down too. Right beside the gifts, right beside the garbage. And I left. The drive home felt longer than it was. The heater in my truck clicked like bad teeth. Every red light gave me another full minute to replay the porch. The bins, her voice, the way she checked over my shoulder to see if anyone on the sidewalk was watching. When I pulled into my driveway, my house looked exactly as it always had. One strand of white lights along the gutter. A plastic candle in the front window. Mary's ceramic angel on the table behind the glass. Nothing grand, nothing styled, just mine. I sat there with both hands on the wheel until someone knocked on the passenger window. I nearly jumped. It was a woman in a navy coat, gray curls pinned back, breath smoking in the cold. I recognized her after a second. Nora Ruiz. She lived 2 doors down from Claire. Retired postal supervisor. The kind of neighbor who knew every package that landed on the block and pretended not to. I rolled the window down. "Mr. Bennett," she said, voice tight. "I'm sorry to come this late." I got out. Is Claire all right? Her expression changed in a way I will never forget. Not pity, not exactly. More like the look a decent person gets when they've seen enough to stop protecting someone else's privacy. No, she said, you are? She held up a large white envelope, creased and damp at one corner. My name was written on the front in Claire's handwriting. I found this in my hydrangeas after your son-in-law dropped some papers getting into his car, she said. And before you ask, yes, I know I should have minded my business. I tried. But at 2:14 this afternoon, I watched Adrian use a key to go into your house while you weren't home. He came back out with his phone raised, taking pictures. Then tonight, after what I saw on that porch, I decided minding my business would make me part of it. I felt the cold move straight through my coat. What's in it? I only saw one page loose. She hesitated. It had your address on a colored map. I took the envelope but didn't open it on the step. My hands were too numb, and something in me already understood that once I looked, the world before that moment would be gone. Come in, I said. My kitchen still smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. I put water on for tea because Mary taught me that when life goes ugly, you boil water first and think second. Nora sat at the table with her gloves folded in her lap while I opened the envelope under the hanging light. Inside was a photocopy of my deed. A brochure for a place called Silver Pines Memory Residence. A business card for a geriatric care consultant. And one heavy color printout on thick paper. An architectural site plan with several blocks shaded pale gold. My house was circled in red. At the top, in clean developer lettering, were the words, Harrow Commons East, Phase 2 Acquisition. Harrow, Adrian's last name. For a second I heard nothing. Not the kettle. Not Nora breathing. Not the old refrigerator clicking on. Just the blood in my ears. Nora leaned forward. Mr. Bennett? I swallowed. Would you mind staying 5 more minutes? Of course. I went straight to the hall closet where I kept my file box on the top shelf. It was a blue metal box with a silver latch. Mary used to call it our fireproof optimism. Tax returns? Insurance papers. House deed copy. Her will. Mine? Savings bonds. The practical spine of a life. The lid was sitting crooked. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Nothing looked dramatic at first. That was the sick part. Papers were there. Folders were there. But things were off by half an inch. My warranty envelope was under my life insurance papers instead of over them. Mary's hospice paperwork was bent at a corner. The manila folder that held the original survey of the property had been opened and shoved back and backward. Someone had stood where I was standing and handled the bones of my life. What I found next was worse. Tucked between the Silver Pines brochure and the site plan was a printed email chain. The first email was from Claire to Adrian, 2 days old. Dad is still resisting. If we frame it as short-term respite after Christmas, he'll cooperate more. Best if the house is handled quickly while he's settled. He gets emotional around his stuff. Under that, Adrian had replied, once the assessment is on record, we can move. Don't let him spiral and ruin this. I read those 2 lines 3 times. Nora made a sound like she wanted to apologize for the human race. I sat down so suddenly the chair legs scraped hard against the floor. All evening I had been asking myself why Claire would be ashamed of me in front of strangers. That email answered a different question entirely. They weren't trying to avoid awkwardness. They were trying to remove me. Nora stayed long enough for me to make photocopies on the old machine I kept for receipts and manuals. She offered to email me the camera stills from her son's porch camera, showing Adrian's car outside my house earlier that afternoon. Before she left, she put one hand over mine and said, "You don't have to decide tonight how angry to be. You only have to decide whether you're going to protect yourself." After she left, I checked every door and window in the house. I don't mean for security. I mean to see whether the place still felt like mine. In the bedroom, Mary's cedar jewelry box sat at an angle on the dresser. In the den, one drawer in the desk didn't close cleanly. In the pantry, the coffee can where I kept spare cash had been moved behind the flour. Tiny things, but they were enough. There is a special nausea that comes from realizing someone you love has crossed your threshold when you weren't there and looked around not like family, but like inventory. At 11:30, my phone lit up. It was Ellie. I answered on the first ring. "Grandpa?" she whispered. In the background I heard dishes and distant laughter and some canned version of, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." "Hey, sweetheart." "Mom said you were tired," she said. "Sam thought maybe you were sick." There it was. The lie they fed the children while my gifts sat by the trash. "I'm not sick," I said carefully. A pause. Then, in the smallest voice, "Did I do something?" That nearly broke me. "No," I said too fast. "Honey, no. None of this is because of you." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your cookies are still outside." I closed my eyes. Before I could answer, I heard Claire in the distance calling her name. Ellie whispered, "I love you," and hung up. I stayed at the kitchen table for a long time after that, staring at the brass spare key hook by the back door. Empty. I remembered Claire at 8, the blue shoelace around her neck, tapping that old key against her front teeth while she told me about school. A key is just love made practical. Mary had been right. It can also be theft with better manners. At 6 the next morning, I was in the driveway with a new lock set, a screwdriver, and the kind of calm that only comes after a man has been hurt too cleanly to doubt himself anymore. Changing a deadbolt isn't complicated if you've got decent hands and a reason. By 7:30, the front and back locks were done. By 8, I'd changed the garage code. By 8:15, I'd moved the blue file box, Mary's jewelry, and the small tin of savings bonds into the trunk of my truck. Then I called Evelyn Chen. Evelyn is an estate attorney in town. 10 years earlier, before her father died, I spent a wet Saturday fixing the wiring in their old duplex because he didn't have the money for a full electrical crew. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but when she heard my voice and then heard the outline of what had happened, she didn't waste time pretending it could wait until New Year's. "Come to my office," she said. "Bring everything. And Tom, don't answer any accusations in writing until I see the papers." That was the first moment I felt something other than humiliation. I felt traction. Evelyn read the documents twice. She laid the site plan flat on her conference table, clicked through county records, and asked questions in that quiet lawyer voice that makes panic sort itself into sequence. The house was the center of it. My corner lot wasn't just a house to Adrian. It connected two parcels he'd already tied up under option contracts. With mine, he had the frontage he needed for a mixed-use development he'd been pitching to investors as Harrow Commons East. Without mine, the numbers changed and the project got uglier. Smaller, less profitable, maybe dead. "He can't sell your property," Evelyn said. "Not without your signature, a valid power of attorney, or a court process. But these," she tapped the Silver Pines brochure, the geriatric consultant card, the printed email, "suggest he was working toward a record of incapacity. Maybe a temporary placement, maybe pressure, maybe a guardianship narrative. And your daughter was helping." There it was. Clean, legal, brutal. My own daughter was helping. Evelyn kept digging. Then she found the piece that made the room go still. There was a scheduled wellness transition assessment for me at my own house on December 26th at 10 in the morning. Silver Pines had me on the calendar. The notes section said family reports increasing confusion, isolation, safety concerns, resistance to support. Family reports. I laughed once. It sounded ugly even to me. "That's not all," Evelyn said. Attached to the assessment email was a request for a mobile notary to be present in case voluntary respite admission paperwork could be completed on-site. Voluntary. With a notary standing by. Evelyn printed the page and slid it toward me. In the margin, Adrian had written, "If Tom starts objecting, Claire handles the emotion." I felt my face go hot and then cold. That was the midpoint of everything. The moment the mystery stopped being a shadow and turned into architecture. The key. The photos. The deed copy. The sudden concern. The Christmas cancellation. They hadn't pushed me away because I embarrassed them. They pushed me away because Christmas gave them cover. If I spent the holiday isolated and confused and hurt, then on the 26th, they could arrive with soft voices, an assessment worker, a notary, and a plan already dressed as care. If I protested, I would sound unstable. If I cried, I would sound overwhelmed. If I refused, they would say I was refusing help. The script was written. They just forgot I was allowed to read it. By noon, Evelyn had drafted a letter revoking any emergency permissions I'd ever informally granted, though thankfully I'd never signed a full power of attorney. She prepared a trespass notice for Adrian. She told me to report the unauthorized entry and document disturbance of the file box. She also suggested something that felt, at first, almost too sharp. Tom, she said, if this house is what they're targeting, take the target away. That afternoon, I signed papers creating a trust. I kept lifetime use of the house, full control while I was alive, and after I was gone, the property would not pass through Claire or Adrian's hands. If it was ever sold, the money would go to Ellie and Sam equally, with a portion to the hospice that cared for Mary. When Evelyn said, "This means they can't touch it," I felt something unclench in my chest I hadn't realized was locked. I wasn't just defending walls. I was pulling my wife's life, my labor, and my grandchildren's future out of greedy hands. Then Claire called. I let it go to voicemail the first time. Then the second. Then the third. On the fourth, I listened. "Dad," she said, and she had already switched to the strained, patient tone of a woman dealing with someone unreasonable. "Why did Adrian's key stop working? He came by to check on you." "Check on me? And why are you not answering?" "We're worried. Please don't do anything impulsive before tomorrow. The assessment is just to help us know what support you need." Tomorrow. Not a misunderstanding. Not a maybe. Scheduled. Then her voice dropped low, almost annoyed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I saved the message. An hour later, Adrian left one too. "Tom, you're reacting emotionally. Nobody is taking anything from you. We're trying to protect you from poor decisions. Let's all be adults tomorrow." Adults. That word from a man who had used my key to rifle through my papers. I saved that message too. That night I didn't drink. I didn't rant. I didn't call relatives fishing for sympathy. I sharpened the pencil on Mary's old ceramic mug, wrote down dates, times, remarks, the money I had given Claire over 12 years, the repairs I had done, the October dizzy spell, the camera footage, the porch humiliation, the wording of each voicemail. At 9:30, Nora texted to say she had emailed the porch camera stills and would testify to whatever she saw. At 10:15, Ellie sent one sentence from her tablet. "Are you mad at us?" I stared at that line until it blurred. Then I wrote back, "Never at you. I love you. See you soon." What I didn't write was this: "I am trying to make sure there is still a door between us they haven't stolen." The next morning was gray and brittle, one of those winter days when the sky looks like old sheet metal. I made coffee. I put on my iron shirt again, this time with a navy sweater over it. I laid the evidence in neat stacks on the dining room table: the deed copy, the site plan, the email chain, the Silver Pines appointment, the voicemails transcribed, the camera stills, the trespass notice, the trust documents. At 9:58, a black SUV pulled up. Then another. I looked through the front curtain and saw Claire first, in a camel coat, phone in hand, face set. Adrian came around the passenger side carrying a leather folder. Behind them stepped a woman in a plum wool coat with a Silver Pines badge clipped to her lapel. A younger man followed with a slim case that could only belong to a mobile notary. And then my stomach dropped. Ellie and Sam got out of the second car in their Christmas sweaters. They had brought the children. That was the moment whatever softness I had left for the adult part of this betrayal burned off completely. You can lie to me. You can use me. You can even try to take from me. But bringing my grandchildren as props to witness my removal from my own house was a level of moral rot I had not wanted to believe in. The doorbell rang. I didn't answer it. I waited until Evelyn's car pulled in behind them, and a county deputy stepped out of the passenger side. Then I opened the door. Cold air spilled into the foyer. So did surprise. Claire's eyes went straight to Evelyn. Adrian's went straight to the deputy. The Silver Pines woman looked like someone realizing she had been told only the clean half of a dirty story. "Dad," Claire said, managing injured concern in 2 syllables. "What is all this?" "My house," I said. "My lawyer. A witness to the truth. Come in." Adrian recovered first. He always did. "Tom, we don't need to make a production out of a wellness conversation." I stepped back but blocked the hallway deeper into the house. "The children go to the kitchen," I said. "Adults stay in the dining room." Sam looked confused. Ellie looked scared and too observant. Nora, who had come through my back door 10 minutes earlier, appeared with hot chocolate already made and said gently, "Come on, kids. I've got marshmallows." Bless that woman. Once the children were out of earshot as much as they could be, we sat. Not comfortably. Not like family. Like people about to find out whether paper or charm ruled the day. Claire started with tears before anyone accused her of anything. "Dad, this is exactly what I was afraid of," she said, voice trembling just enough. "You shut us out, change locks, refuse calls. Because you used my key to enter my house." She blinked. Adrian cut in. "I entered to check for hazards." "With a copied deed and a development map in your folder?" His jaw moved once. The deputy remained silent, which somehow made the room feel tighter. The Silver Pines woman cleared her throat. "Mr. Bennett, perhaps I should explain that we're here only to discuss respite options. You're here because my daughter and her husband reported me increasingly confused and unsafe," I said. "You're here because they booked an assessment without my consent. You're here because they planned to have a notary present in case they could pressure me into signing paperwork on the spot." The notary looked down at his own case like he wanted to disappear inside it. Claire turned to Adrian, then back to me, already adjusting her script. "Dad, nobody is pressuring you. We were trying to support you after your episode." "My episode was dehydration." "You don't know that." I leaned forward. "I know more than you think." Then I laid the first photograph on the table. Adrian's car outside my house at 2:14 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The timestamp glowed in the lower corner. Next to it, another still, Adrian at my side door, key in hand. Then the deed copy. Then the Silver Pines brochure. Then the site plan with my house circled in red beneath Harrow Commons East. The room changed temperature. Adrian reached for the site plan first. Evelyn put one finger on it before he could touch it. "No," she said, "you don't get to rearrange the evidence." Claire's face lost color in a visible wave. "Dad," she said, and this time it wasn't patient. It was scared. "Where did you get these?" "Nora found the envelope your husband dropped after he used my key and went through my papers." I slid the email printout last. Claire saw her own words before anyone read them aloud. I watched recognition hit her eyes. Shame came after it, but much too late to matter. I read the line anyway. "Best if the house is handled quickly while he's settled. He gets emotional around his stuff." Silence. The kind that humiliates the guilty more than yelling ever could. The Silver Pines woman slowly took her badge off her coat. Not dramatically. Just carefully, like someone disengaging from a contaminated process. "I was not informed of any property matters," she said. "Of course you weren't," Evelyn replied. "Because elder placement as leverage for real estate acquisition plays badly on intake forms." Adrian finally snapped. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You're turning routine planning into some kind of crime scene because you're stubborn and paranoid." I looked at him. Really looked. "Tell me how my house ended up in your project, Adrian." He smiled, but the polish had cracked now. "It's called due diligence." "My address circled in red is due diligence?" "It's a concept package." "My deed in your folder is a concept?" Claire jumped in, voice breaking. "Dad, listen to me. We were drowning. Adrian's project was close. So close, and if it came through, everything would stabilize. The kids' school, the mortgage, all of it. We thought if you moved somewhere safer for a while." "There it is," I said. She stopped. Not because I shouted, because I didn't. For the first time in my life, I let my daughter hear exactly how clearly I saw her. "You didn't think about what was best for me. You thought about what was easiest for you. You used the language of care to dress greed in family clothes. Her mouth opened, then closed. Adrian pushed back his chair. Careful. The deputy finally spoke. Sit down. And Adrian, to his credit or his fear, sat. I took the brass key out of my pocket and set it in the middle of the table. Small object. Loud sound. You know what this used to mean? I asked Claire. It meant you could always come home. After school. After heartbreak. After bad decisions. No questions. Your mother believed giving someone a key was a way of saying you are safe with me. I tapped the site plan with one finger. You turned it into access. Claire started crying then, the real kind this time, ugly and wet and impossible to style. Under different circumstances I might have reached for her. That instinct did not die quickly in me. But that morning I kept my hands flat on the table. Because pity is how men like Adrian keep winning. Evelyn slid the trust documents across to them. As of yesterday, she said, Mr. Bennett's property is held in trust. He retains full lifetime use and control. Neither of you has any future claim to direct transfer, sale, or leverage. After his death, benefits pass to the children, not through either parent. Adrian stared. I watched calculation become panic. You can't do that, he said. I almost smiled. I already did. He turned to Claire so fast the chair legs squealed. Do you understand what one holdout parcel does to a closing? He said, forgetting for one beautiful second that the room contained witnesses, law, and his own mask in pieces. There it was, naked at last. Not concern, not safety, not family. A closing. Claire looked at him like she was seeing the full shape of the trap for the first time, including the part where she had volunteered to become one of its teeth. In the kitchen, I heard a mug clink. Then Ellie's voice, small but carrying. Mom? Nobody moved. Ellie stood at the dining room entrance, Sam behind her clutching the paper crown from Christmas Eve. Her eyes went from her mother's face to the documents on the table to the key in the middle. Were you sending Grandpa away? No courtroom cross-examination on earth could have landed harder than that question from a 12-year-old girl in a red sweater. Claire made a sound I don't have a word for. I stood up then, not to attack, but to protect the children from one more second of adult cowardice. Ellie, Sam, I said gently, go back with Nora. Ellie didn't move. Instead, she looked at the gifts I had finally brought inside that morning and stacked by the tree. Then she looked at the adults again. You said he was tired, she whispered to Claire. The room collapsed inward around that sentence. The Silver Pines woman picked up her folder. Mr. Bennett, I'm leaving. And for the record, our residence does not admit anyone under contested family pressure. She looked directly at Claire when she said the last two words. Then she looked at Adrian. Do not contact me again. The notary snapped his case shut so fast it sounded like a lid on a coffin. He didn't say goodbye. The deputy handed Adrian the trespass notice and said, any further entry onto Mr. Bennett's property without explicit permission will be documented accordingly. Given the allegation of unauthorized access and the materials here, I recommend you speak to counsel before doing anything else. Adrian took the paper but did not seem able to feel it. That still wasn't the end. I reached into the second folder and pulled out a typed list. Not legal, personal. Every payment I had made for Claire's family over the years. Down payment support. Tuition. Furnace. Medical copays after Sam broke his arm. Car insurance gap one spring. Adrian missed 3 commissions in a row. Interest-free. Unrecorded. Given because love used to be enough. I slid it across to Claire. This is not a bill, I said. You can't repay what this was supposed to be. I'm giving it to you so you can never again lie to yourself about what you were willing to cash in. She looked down at the numbers and covered her mouth. Then I gave her the final truth. You didn't cancel Christmas, I said. You canceled the witness. You wanted me hurt, off balance, and grateful for whatever scraps of kindness you left after. That ends here. Adrian stood, perhaps to leave, perhaps to regain posture. It didn't matter. He was finished. The room knew it before he did. On his way out, he made one last attempt to pull authority around himself like a coat. This isn't over. Evelyn answered before I could. Oh, it is. By this afternoon, copies of this project material and the unauthorized property documentation will be with your brokerage compliance office, your investors where relevant, and the elder exploitation unit. She gave him a thin, professional smile. You picked the wrong old man. The beautiful thing was, I didn't need to say a word after that. The consequence had already entered the room and sat down. After they left, the house went so quiet I could hear the baseboard heat ticking. Ellie cried first, then Sam because his sister was crying. I made them toast because toast is what you make for children when the adults have failed and the day needs to become physical again. Butter, jam, warm plates. Something ordinary to stand on. Claire texted 6 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. Adrian called once from an unknown number. I let Evelyn handle him after that. The fallout didn't happen like fireworks. It happened like load-bearing beams giving way, one after another. Adrian's investors learned he had included an uncommitted parcel in a late-stage acquisition package and had been building projections around property he did not control. That alone was bad. The rest made it poisonous. His brokerage suspended him while they reviewed the matter. A complaint was filed over the unauthorized entry and documentation misuse. His big development didn't survive January. Claire moved out of that gleaming house by March. Not because she suddenly became noble, but because nothing stable grows inside a lie once the floor has been pulled open. She sent me a letter the old-fashioned way, 3 pages long, written by hand so I would know she couldn't edit her remorse with a backspace key. I believed parts of it, that was all I could do honestly. She wrote that Adrian had been pressing for months, that the project was failing, that they were behind on everything, that he kept telling her a short stay for me would be easier, safer, temporary. She wrote that she hated herself the first time she said the house instead of Dad's house. She wrote that when Ellie asked, "Were you sending Grandpa away?" She realized she had already become the kind of mother who teaches children to call betrayal management. I folded the letter and put it in the blue file box. Not to treasure it, to remember it accurately. We met for coffee in April. Public place. Midday, no Adrian, no children. She looked 10 years older and 15 years more honest. I let her talk until the cup in front of me went cold. When she finished, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought of the porch, the bins, the key, the email, the kids in Christmas sweaters brought to watch me be handled. Then I thought of Mary, who loved fiercely but never confused love with surrender. I might, I said, but access and forgiveness are not the same thing. She cried quietly. I didn't comfort her. That was part of the new truth too. Ellie and Sam started coming over every other Saturday after that. At first, Claire drove them and stayed in the truck. Later, she came in for tea sometimes, always after knocking, always waiting for me to open the door. It sounds small. It wasn't. Knocking is what respect looks like after entitlement loses its key. The children know more than I wish they did about adult failure, but less than many children learn. We planted tomatoes in spring. We painted the back fence in June. I taught Sam how to tighten a loose cabinet hinge without stripping the screw. I helped Ellie build a portfolio for the art magnet program she wanted. Once, while we were sorting old ornaments in the den, she found the camel overcoat brush Mary used to keep by the door and asked whose it was. Grandma's rule, I told her, take care of what carries you through weather. She nodded like she understood more than I said. Maybe she did. As for the house, I kept it. Not because I'm stubborn, because a life is not supposed to be surrendered to whoever calculates fastest. I repaired the loose kitchen tile in May. Repainted the hallway in July. Left the pencil marks on the pantry frame exactly where they were. I even rehung the brass spare key hook by the back door after months of wanting to rip it off the wall. Only now it stays empty. One key on that hook became enough truth for one lifetime. The next Christmas Eve, the snow came early, fat and quiet, blurring the streetlights by 5 o'clock. Ellie helped roll cookie dough. Sam kept stealing the cinnamon sugar when he thought I wasn't looking. We used Mary's dented star cutter again. The old blue tin filled up the way it used to. Not perfectly. Nothing is perfect after certain things. But honestly, warmly, without performance. Just before dinner, there was a knock at the front door. Not a key in the lock. A knock. Sam ran to me like he always does when he wants permission to be first to joy. I opened the door, and there stood Claire in a plain wool coat, no audience, no photographer smile, holding nothing but a pie. She had clearly made herself because the crust looked lopsided and brave. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Hi, Claire." She didn't step forward. She waited. I let the silence sit just long enough for both of us to feel what had changed, and what had been earned. Then I moved aside. After everyone had eaten and the dishes were stacked and the children had gone glassy-eyed with sugar and happiness, I stood alone for a moment in the dark front hall. The tree lights blinked soft gold across the floorboards. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I could hear Ellie laughing from the kitchen, and Claire apologizing to Sam for burning the first crust, and Sam telling her it was still good. I took my own brass house key from my pocket, turned the deadbolt, and felt the lock answer only to me. Then I set the key on the little table beneath Mary's ceramic angel and listened to my family knock with their hands, not their rights. That was how I knew I had my home back.